The Douglas Coleman Show is made possible with support from Seth David Radwell, a recent guest on the program and author of American Schism, How the Two Enlightenments Hold the Secret to Healing Our Nation, released this past July. As Publishers Weekly writes in its recent glowing book life review of American Schism, business executive Radwell's epic debut examines the historical influences that have led to what he sees as the collapse of politics in the United States. Seth Radwell makes the case that the current chasm between the American right and left can be traced back to the 18th century's Age of Enlightenment and the basic tenets of liberty, equality, and reason. American Schism provides a historical perspective that can help us fight today's unreason with reason and bridge current-day divides. American Schism by Seth David Radwell is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold. For more information, go to americanschismbook.com.
It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Dane Reis. Hey, Dane, how are ya?
I'm great. Yourself? Thanks for having me.
Oh, doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I got to compliment whoever wrote your one sheet. Did you do that?
I did, yes.
It is really, really good. And I'll tell you why. Because I get a lot of one sheets. And, I do about 10 interviews a week. And most of them I take a look at and go, okay. And just kind of get an idea of who the person is and then go off on my own tangents with the person in a conversation. With yours, it was written so well that I want to just do it the way it's set up because I thought, these are great questions and great talking points. So congratulations. You get the Douglas Coleman Award for Best One Sheet written this year.
Yes, bravo. Here we go.
So John said that you were or are in Australia at the moment?
I am, yeah. So my wife and I, we'd previously been living in Vegas for the past 7.5 years or so, performing and doing all sorts of fun things over there. But my wife is Australian, and then as the pandemic happened, kind of moved up our timeline. It was a combination of that plus some family things with her side of the family out here, and we thought, you know what, seems like good a time as any to make the move because we've got a little 4-year-old girl, and it was always in the grand scheme, the grand plan of our journey to make it down here. It just got fast forwarded a little bit.
Okay. Well, I've had a couple of people on the show from Australia in the last couple of weeks. And they said you guys are under hard lockdown right now.
Oh, not us right here. It depends on where you're from or where you're living. So right now I'm in Adelaide, South Australia, and things are more or less normal. It's nothing like New South Wales up in Sydney or Victoria where Melbourne is. Here it's more or less normal. Life is normal.
All right. Yeah, I think they were from Sydney, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty full on out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, they were back to basically you can't go anywhere. That was their...
Yeah, I mean... Yeah. I think Australia. I think there's kind of like the two different approaches, right, with this whole COVID thing. And Australia's chosen to be very proactive, I guess might be the right word, and so they move very swiftly and very quickly when anything kind of pops up. For instance, we had a couple cases maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago, and it wasn't very many, but it was like a little tiny cluster of community cases, and they said, no, we're going to just shut this down, see if we can get on top of some contact tracing and follow up with people. And they said, it's going to be a week. It was exactly a week, and then that was it. And as far as a hardcore lockdown, you could go to the grocery store, go do essential things, go get some exercise outside. But the idea was that, don't go over to friends' houses and, just regular life. But after that, it was back to normal. So I don't know. I guess there's divided opinions on different ways of how to approach it, but for this, it seems to be working well enough the way they're working so far for us here.
How is the vaccine situation over there? Is everybody getting it?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's rolling out. It's not as I don't think it's quite as available to everybody quite yet everywhere. I might be completely incorrect about that, but it definitely was slower coming out and opening up different age demographics and making it available, to the more high risk demographics, and then opening it up slowly just to make sure that they had the amount of supply, right? So it's not been as aggressive as the States, but I don't know if it's had to necessarily need to be as aggressive because the cases have been so much lower as well.
Yeah, it's pretty much wide open here. I mean, they have drive-up places.
Right.
You can just kind of pull up, get your shot. Okay, thank you, bye.
Exactly. There you go.
So, okay. Well, anyways, let's see. You are the founder of You Booked It. Now, what is that? Tell me about You Booked It.
Yeah, so You Booked It is, well, it started off as a podcast, but now it's kind of expanded through the podcast into a bit more than that. So with You Booked It, really the goal is that, I help entertainers to get booked more consistently. And I do that using, at this point, a specific process that allows them to create long-term successful entertainment careers. And that all started because of the podcast. And it started me interviewing loads of people from all over the entertainment industry, not just Broadway, not just Hollywood. Because if you look at the podcast landscape, at least in my niche, that's kind of what everyone concentrates on, are those two giant markets. But really, that's really just a small percentage of the professional entertainment world globally. So it's like, we need to have more conversations about really what the majority of this industry is, from the production side to the performance side to everything. And that's what I've been doing. I've been interviewing people from all over the industry, and through that started really finding and discovering some various fundamentals that kept coming up, and that inspired me to create the You Booked It community, which is a group of entertainment professionals or aspiring entertainment professionals. I built the community on Discord. I'm not sure if you've heard of that platform before, but I chose that because I find it to be very open and very easy to organize information. And right now there's about 300 or over 300 members in there. And that is, there's Tony winners in there, there's Broadway performers in there, voiceover artists, all over the things. And from there, I started posting some master classes and bringing in some really fantastic talent. I had Laura Bell Bundy come in. She's a Tony-nominated actress for Legally Blonde, for Elle Woods, and had some great talent come in and give master classes. And then that's also expanded into me coaching and taking on clients and things like this, and saying, all right, well, let's get more specific about this, right? Let's, for the people that are really wanting to make moves and advance their career, then let's have more of that one-on-one relationship. So it's kind of a suite of various educational things that can help you move forward in your career depending on where you are in your career.
Okay, so you're not a PR company per se.
No.
Okay, I'm still trying to get my head around exactly what you do. So you're speaker coach. So you're like a life coach for entertainment celebrities?
I suppose you could. I suppose that'd be one way to sum it up. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So it's
all right. Sorry, didn't mean to throw you with that question. Well, it's kind of unique what you're doing, because I don't think I've ever spoke to anybody who did quite what you do. If I have the correct image in my head of this.
Yeah, the reason is that came about, and the reason I guess do what I do is because my own personal career and performance career and entertainment career is very varied. And I came to the industry a bit later in my life. I wasn't until I was about 17 and a half, 18 years old, that I really found performance and singing and acting and dancing. And I got injured out of sports, and I literally had nothing to do because I was so used to having some kind of extracurricular something in my life. And then I had my sister's friend at the time. She said, "Hey, we need a guy to lift some girls here at this at this dance production. Do you want to do it? And I said, oh, I've got nothing else going on, so sure. And then that kind of just snowballed into a whole career. But what I discovered is through going through my various trainings, I went to the Boston Conservatory on the East Coast for musical theater, which is one of the top schools in the country for it. And, I graduated from the supposed, top tier school, got into the real world, and you're like, I have no idea what I'm actually supposed to do with this skill set now. Like, I'm talented, sure. But then suddenly realized, look, talent doesn't really get you that far in this industry if you want to be a professional at. There's so many other things to creating a professional arts career, the business side of things and the networking side of things that no one teaches you. So I thought it was good to have those conversations and to help people really discover what it is that they want. I also found a big problem was, maybe problem's not the right word, but for instance, when I went to the conservatory, the whole mentality was Broadway, 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 kind of Broadway or bust, right? To the exclusion of everything else. And that's not to say that's a bad thing at all. For a lot of people, that's exactly what they wanted out of their careers. But what I realized was, I don't know if I necessarily want to be on Broadway. What I really want is to work professionally using my skills. And I wasn't really drawn to any one particular market. I just wanted to say, yep, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to go perform, or I'm going to go be working in this industry as a professional, not going to be a waiter 40 hours a week and then trying to sing, act, and dance on the side. I wanted to be an entertainer professionally full time, right? And that's what I did throughout my careers. I found opportunities and said yes and created my own path, my own journey that fulfilled me. And it's really about helping people find their own way and figure out what fulfills them so they can create a career for themselves.
Well, it's true about acting. I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Art in New York City many moons ago, and I found that a lot of the people that went there really wanted to do theater. You had talked about Broadway. And that was the sort of the goal of most of the people that were there. However, years later, I find out that a lot of them ended up in film simply because that's where the money was.
Right.
But they go back to theater when they're not doing film because the theater is sort of their, for lack of a better analogy, that's their gym. That's where they go and work out and work their acting skills on stage, because it's so much different than doing film. And it keeps them sharp. It keeps them fresh. It keeps that interaction alive between the audience and the performer, that sort of energy. But I agree with you about the other point that you brought up, where once you finish, then what do you do? I mean, here you have all these skills, but nobody teaches you about the real world. When I went to the American Academy, it was long before the internet. And what I've also discovered now is that you have to be all of those people. You've got to wear all the hats with the business side, with the publicity side. It's all DIY on the internet. Everything is. Back in those days, if you got good enough, you got a manager. They would take you under their wing and handle all of that for you so that you could just concentrate on your craft. Now, no. And particularly with musicians, because I'm also a musician. And I rediscovered, I kind of took a 20-year break. And during that 20-year break is when the internet and digital and all of that came along. And when I got back to it, I was like, oh my God. Because this whole world had just been turned upside down. And I had to relearn everything. And what I found was a very difficult time trying to do both sides, because it's not inherent in a lot of artists. The business side throws a lot of artists because they're right brain people. And business is, really a left brain function. And it was difficult. Not all. I mean, I've met a few that were particularly great. But I also found that the better the artist was, maybe better's not the right word, but the more creative they were, the more they really excelled in the creative side, the worse they were business-wise. There was this sort of lopsided balance. And so I think anybody who comes along who can sort of spotlight that is doing a good service for entertainment professionals and people who want to delve into this business. So I'm happy to see that you are doing that. One of your talking points, the parallels between entertainers and entrepreneurs, since we're just kind of on that subject.
Yeah.
I had a conversation yesterday with an actor named Tammy Dahlstrom, who's in the new 3rd season of Miracle Worker with Daniel Radcliffe and Steve Buscemi. It's on TBS. I don't know if you know that show. But she was saying that, you do have to do everything yourself. And, we were talking about commercials because she did a lot of commercials when she was a kid, and that's how she kind of got her foot in the door. And I said, well, is that something that you have on your resume that's impressive to people who are casting for particular things? And she said, yes and no. She says it's better than having nothing on your resume. But at the same time, because of the internet, you can just create your own. And see, that's what we've done. We created our own production company out of my music started, and then into this podcast, and then into a video production. And, you're writing your own resume at that point, really.
Yeah, 100%. And the catch, of course, with the wearing all the hats part of it and being your own PR agency and your own marketing firm, all these things, is that unless you gain some level of stardom, right, and have a substantial amount of income coming in through whatever it is that you do, all those services are very expensive to hire, professional PR firms and marketing firms and things like this. So it's one of those things that also tends to be very inaccessible to entertainment professionals. You can pay for your life and you can pay to do that, but to take it to the next level of, say, like an A-list celebrity, that's just kind of out of the question. And figuring out how to do that yourself, we can't rely on our managers and our agents. They really just become assets and tools in the tool belt to leverage versus something that you kind of put all of your faith and your trust into. And everything moves so fast now as well, right? So gigs or opportunities will come up, and because it's the internet, because you're getting an email, because it's a social media post, an opportunity comes and goes in minutes. So you have to be ready to see it and pounce on it and take advantage of it when it arises. And that's the other thing with the internet, is while everyone is creating all of their own content, which is brilliant, right? At the same time, it kind of creates this need to keep feeding the beast, because the casting directors, or whoever the decision maker is able to very instantly see who you are, what you do, what you've been up to, what you look like this afternoon because you posted something, right? And that's what people want. They want to see the relevancy. They want to see how you connect on camera. What do you look like now, right now? And it certainly poses its sets of challenges. But if you can get on top of it and treat your digital presence as something that is an asset, as something that is a business tool, and view it that way, not just something that's fun to binge, then that's how you are able to, that's a very strong way you're able to kind of get your edge in the room.
Well, I guess that would be my next question when you said the edge, because there is so much crap out there. There's so much bad content out there that the good content seems to get lost. And, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, everybody can do it, and that's the good news. And the bad news is that everybody can do it. And
right.
So how do you get your head above the swamp, the water line, to get noticed? And that seems to be the big question with a lot of people. You can make a certain success with social media, but I'll give you an example. I know some great indie bands who are making a living with their work. They were until COVID, but assuming COVID goes away and they can perform live because that was the bulk of their money.
Right.
They were making a good living, and they have hundreds of thousands of social media followers and a great website and all of it. It looks like a beautiful picture. They hit a roadblock at that point because the next step up is the major labels. And the major labels have lost a lot of ground with the internet. I mean, lots of it. But the one that they didn't lose was the PR and the marketing side. That they still have wrapped up. And it is nearly impossible for an indie band to get their album or single on the front page of iTunes, because that is sort of exclusively reserved for Sony and Universal Music.
For the highest bidder, right?
Right, okay. So how do you get to that point without signing with a major label? Now, major labels won't even look at you these days unless you have a following well established. That's changed, because in the old days, they were scouting, and the unknown sitting in the little coffee shop singing his heart out with a guitar could get discovered. I'm not saying they all did. Most of them didn't, but some did. A few did. These days, that doesn't really happen much anymore. The only people I've known to get discovered, if you will, are ones that had a pretty big following that they built up all by themselves. And they got noticed by some A&R person at some major label. And I know a couple of them that turned down the major label, which I loved. I thought, yeah, good for you. You know, they turned them down because they were doing just fine on their own. They didn't have aspirations to, buy a $50 million house in Malibu. They just wanted to do their music and to make a living at it. So, God bless the working class in the music industry, which internet has created. There really was no working class when I was growing up doing it. I think the only people that were barely making a living were the ones doing weddings, because weddings paid fairly well back then before the karaoke machine sort of killed that job. Yeah. But
now they get big corporate events, right?
Well, some.
Actually,
but live music is something that has been, I don't want to say completely replaced, but I think you'll find that corporate events and weddings and things are opting for DJs these days rather than a full-on live band, unless they've got a lot of money or unless they have some connection with the band, like, it's their brother, or the person getting married is in the industry. I don't know. I've got stories about that, but let's go back to your list. The value of failures. You certainly have to learn from your failure. Relationships and being nice. Now, being nice is not something that is synonymous with entrepreneurs or entertainers once they get off stage. At least, in my opinion, or at least in my travels. But that's not to say that entertainers aren't nice people. Some of them are fantastic people. But being nice isn't something that I associate with the entertainment industry, generally speaking.
Yeah, fair enough. I think there's I think that reason that happens is because traditionally you could have that diva, that star, right? And they could ask for whatever they want. And I mean, not to say that doesn't exist at certain levels, but it really doesn't serve anyone anymore. Yes, there is certainly something to be said if you or someone is, say the lead of a show, and you're trying to have a conversation with them mid-show or right before the show, and they're saying, being a little short with you because they're trying to prep and get focused. So I think there's a difference between you not acknowledging that someone's process and that they are not intentionally being rude to you, but they're actually trying to prep so they can do their best work. There's that, but then that's not really what the value of being nice is really talking about. It's more of about there's such a massive talent pool now, and it keeps growing and growing and growing, and these arts training programs keep turning out people every single year, thousands and thousands of people. And there's incredibly talented people now. And people are even pushed. I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to if you're in a dance class or if you're in some kind of whatever the class might be or whatever the skill set might be, so whatever the sport might be. If there are better people in the room than you are able to grow faster and you're able to push yourself to the next level because you see what that next level is right there in front of you. Now we've got the internet, so everyone can see what everyone can do. So you're not just limited to your local community, be like, oh, I'm the best in this town. You can go on Instagram and you go, oh, so that's what people my age are doing, which can help you and inspire you to advance your skills. And I think that's a big reason why there's so much insane talent right now. And it's just only going to get more and more. So when you get to the world, suddenly everyone is good. Everyone is good. So what is the differentiating factor once you start working with people? The relationship factor. Do people want to work with you? Are you worth working? Are you fun to be around? Do you get good work done? Do you show up on time? Do you do all the things that have very little to do with your actual skill set? Because your skill set becomes the dime a dozen thing to find. We can find anyone to do whatever it is that you do, but we want people that we know that we want to be around and we can develop relationships with. And ultimately, that's also what leads to creating sustainability and more predictability in this industry, is that if you have relationships, well, then the larger your network becomes, people always are happy to refer jobs, help people out. I mean, I pass off work all the time to friends, and I get work coming into me all of the time because of relationships I've built up over years, right? So it starts making it so you're not always having to hustle every second of the day in order to, create a sustainable living in the entertainment industry.
Well, that's a very good point. And that actually transcends to any business.
For sure, 100%.
If you're treated well in a particular shop that you go to buy something, you'll go back. But if the sales clerk looks at you like you're giving off a bad smell when you walk in the door, you probably won't go back to that store again. Even just a simple analogy like that, I mean, it's true. That does work. And it works. It works for anything.
If there's scarcity around the person, if it's a celebrity, right, then that's when people start thinking, oh, I can afford to be not so nice to people because I am the limited commodity, right? That you can't get, you can't get another one of me. But even at that, it still doesn't serve you to do that because there's still so much talent out there. And then if you're gonna be really not nice to people, mean and difficult to work with, well, then you better bring a lot of revenue for the producer. Otherwise, you're not worth having around. Like then you become a monetary choice, and that's it, versus a relationship choice as well.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Are you an independent musician? How would you like to have your songs played on hundreds of radio stations just like the one you're listening to right now? Join MusicSubmit.com and we'll promote your music to radio stations and blogs in your genre. It's free to set up your account, and we guarantee your music will be considered for airplay by radio stations worldwide. Why not sign up today? It's free. MusicSubmit.com. Radio promotion for indie musicians.
Hey, this is Ray Powers. Don't touch anything. You've got it right where you need it. Tuned in to the Douglas Coleman Show. You heard me.
Well, that's true, although, depending on which side of the desk you're sitting on, one could argue which side is more important, because you just made the argument that, well, the talent's a dime a dozen, so who brings in the most money? And that's the one we're going to go with. Even though the guy who's bringing in the most money could be the biggest asshole in the building. It's that balance again. Entertainment and entrepreneur. You've got it right on your talking points. And I think that's always been the balance, though. That hasn't changed with the internet. What has changed is the amount of talent that is readily available, because you wouldn't have even known about all of these other people without some sort of a connection to something. Now all you got to do is just click on YouTube, and there they are. There's everybody. And
everything's so niched out too, and that's part of how I think the entertainment industry has really changed as well. Because I think about music, and I think about my childhood and growing up and being in the car and everything that my parents would listen to, and they'd be listening to the Beatles or the Bee Gees and things like this. I'm like, bands that I love now, right? But then didn't appreciate it all. But then you start talking to other people like around my age and their parents, and everyone's parents kind of like the same people, right? Because there's almost like there's such a limited pool in a way of who to be into at the time, right? And now you can find your people anywhere, whatever the music genre is, whatever the art genre is, whatever the thing that you're interested in, you can find your people, man. And there's not really a need to have mass global appeal anymore. It's all about having very specific and niched appeal.
Yeah, that's the one part that I dislike. Not so much with music, but with podcasts. In fact, I even wrote a book about it, because I really dislike the idea of the niche with a podcast. And I've fought against it ever since I started this thing. I want mass appeal for my podcast. So I interview anybody and everybody that I think is going to be interesting. I don't limit it. I tend to have entertainment people on just because that's kind of who comes through. But lately I've interviewed well over 300 authors who we could argue whether they're entertainment people or not. Maybe yes, maybe no. Is a writer part of the entertainment community, do you think?
I mean, they're certainly creatives, right?
Yeah, unless they're writing encyclopedia.
Yeah, I guess that's not really all that, or if they're, true.
I guess it depends on what they're writing is really more.
For sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I get massive entertainment from, but
fiction writers and
things like this. Yeah.
Yeah. And it depends, because even the interview, like if I have a fantasy fiction writer on, they're wildly creative as actors or painters or musicians or any of them. And then if I have somebody on who writes a political kind of historical thing, nonfiction, they tend to be more analytical and more, left brain business type people. But I always think that there is a need to have that other person in the relationship. As much as you can DIY everything on the internet now, I'm not so sure that's a great idea, because you don't want to be the only person in the room, and I don't think you want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to have people around you who know aspects of the business better than you do. Like you said, unfortunately, the downside is they don't come cheap. And so you need sort of the financial backing, because I don't want to do my own PR. I want to just give it to somebody else to do it. But when I see that people are charging $10,000 for 6 months of PR, I kind of go, oh, wow, So what do you do? I mean, where does the person, do you really have to take this all on yourself?
I think for quite a while you do, and I think you have to kind of take things one step at a time and try to hire professionals where you can, right? I think that's a big thing for if you're a professional in this industry, that there are things that you can DIY because you either have the skill set or look, it just is financially not a feasible thing to do, like, spending $10,000 for a PR agency for 6 months, because PR and things like that also tend to be, ongoing expenses, right? I mean, if you've got a big project, but it's about kind of that consistency, right? And I think you have to leverage the platforms that are available to you and use that as your PR as much as possible. And you can think outside the box. You can get yourself interviewed on various podcasts. That's a nice thing that you can do these days. And you can reach out to different media outlets, because there's also very niched out different publications and online publications to get more exposure, which helps you with your discoverability and legitimacy when you do go into the rooms and things like that, or you are submitting for things. But I think as a entertainment professional, look at where you can afford professionals. Unless your friend is a brilliant photographer, don't have your friends do your headshots, your body shots. Go hire professionals. Now, a lot of stuff is about reels, and you need your video. You need the video content, right? And no matter what it is that you are doing, if it's film or stage, you need different reels for different things, or a reel that kind of contains all of this stuff, right? Depending on what the project is that you're submitting for. But hire a videographer, hire an editor. Really, I think, find a good editor is huge, because editing can make and break the what would you call it? The captivatingness, or how captivating your content is. And
I gotta cut in here for a second. So
no worries.
With editing, because I think there is a definite line with age groups and editing. People my age don't like the 2-second cut edits. We get dizzy. I know most of the people in my age group say, God, why do they cut those things like that? And they want to just see, one shot, then another shot, then another shot. But I see the ones very clean. But I see the ones that they're doing on TikTok and some of the Instagram stuff that the younger kids are putting out, and it's all like 2-second cuts or even 1-second cuts.
Yeah, for sure. And there's definitely a balance to be had. And I agree with you, because at the end of the day, a reel is, say it's a dancing reel. Your dance reel is, when people watch it, the goal is not for someone to go, wow, man, they are quite the cinematographer.
Yeah, exactly.
That is not what you want people to think.
Good point.
Especially with dance, people need to see that what you can do, right? You have to be clever with your editing, but you also, if you're doing, a pirouette series or a leap or doing leaps, you have to cut it in a way that actually shows you doing the thing, and not cutting it in a way that alludes to, well, maybe I just did all those pirouettes perfectly. No, we still need to see that you can do the thing. This is not a music video,
right?
But you can find that balance of, versus just having, you set your camera up on a tripod, press record, and then you go and do something in front of it. That's about the bare minimum as you can possibly do. Or you can get yourself like a handheld gimbal and things like that. Really allow some really cool effects with the camera, just the stabilization that you get on it. But you can still keep yourself in the frame the entire time, and it really shows off what you can still do. So I think there's there's a definite balance. The goal is always to show what you do, and like I said, no one wants to think that you're an amazing cinematographer after watching your reel. That's unless it's a cinematography reel, right?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's where a lot of people get confused.
I'm still laughing about that. It's funny that you brought up dance specifically, because some of the dance videos that I've seen, particularly from the K-pop boy bands from Korea, now not to single them out, but I'm going to single them out anyways. It looks like that they're great dancers because of the editing, like you said, right? When I look at that and I go, oh yeah, wow, that is great editing. Makes them look like they're good dancers. But when you see the single shot of them doing it, it's like auto-tune for dance video is the way I look at it. You know, it gives the illusion that you actually can sing, but without that slick editing, they really aren't that good. Not all of them, but I've seen enough of them. And do you know who Kyle Hanagami is?
No, I don't.
Okay. So see, this is the vastness of the internet. I mean, he's like one of the major influencers on YouTube. And he's also a choreographer, very famous in LA. But he was talking about how with his videos, he is very conscious of that when he does these little 4-minute videos of his students and different projects he works on, that they don't go out of their mind with editing, because people have caught on to that fact that you can really make something look great that isn't with a lot of slick editing. And if you equate that to music, I would have a laugh that you listen to a song, and at the end of the song you say, wow, the EQ was so good on that.
Yeah. Hold on.
Oh, it just kind of defeats the whole purpose of the song, doesn't it?
Exactly right. Yeah, and the same thing happens with photos. I guess if you are an editorial model, it's less important, because at the end of the day, you are going to be make-upped and edited, to the nines. So that's less. It's more about your structure and things like this. But if you are submitting headshots or any kind of comp card for an in-person event, right, or someone's going to hire you or at least give you a callback, or just hire you on the spot. If the photo you send is touched up to the point where it looks like a great photo of you, but it's just a little bit too good, like that's not serving you. I know multiple people, my friends have shown up on events and been told to go home.
They weren't recognized.
They look at the photo, they look at them, they're like, okay, I can see that this is you, but this is not what I hired. So go away, and I'll get someone else.
Yeah, so the one that people love to touch up is their teeth. And you see these people with these blazing white teeth, and you know that they're fake. You know it's Photoshop. Yeah,
and everyone kind of, and it's okay to, it doesn't have to be completely raw. You can touch things up a bit. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's definitely that line. You still got to look like you.
Well, I can remember doing a photo session for a magazine cover that I was just recently on. And after about 200 photos, we started fooling around with Photoshop, and it was amazing how much weight I could lose just by changing the aspect ratio of the pictures. And I thought, wow, I'm 40 pounds lighter in that one.
Look at that.
Yeah, so we tried to find a nice balance between that. Otherwise, people would go, oh, that's not you. That's funny. That's very funny. This was supposed to be like a 20-minute interview, but we've run 43 at this point, and if you're not in a hurry, we can do about 10 minutes more and we'll make it a full show, and I'll just give you the whole show. How's that?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, because I'm kind of enjoying this conversation. It's nice to get somebody on who I can bat all these ideas at, and who has a beautiful one sheet. So let me get to another one here. What is one thing you wish someone would have told you at the very beginning of your career?
Yeah, it's the one thing that I tell everyone to do. I talk about this all the time, either on the podcast or with people that I'm working one-on-one with, and it is to ask yourself 2 questions. So the one thing is 2 things. And the first question is, what do you want out of your career? And the second question is, what are you willing to do / sacrifice or give up in order to see that become real? Because I think a lot of people think that they want, say, Broadway, or they want to be in movies in Hollywood. And they think they want that, but they don't really understand what that really entails. Also, even regardless of the sacrifice or the work that it's going to take to actually achieve that, I think that there's a lot of people, just the way their brains work, the way their risk tolerance doesn't really lend itself to certain things. There's a lot of people that, I know a lot of performers that have made careers, as professional entertainers, but they need that steady paycheck. They need that 401k. They need that reliability, and they will stay in shows for 5 years, 10 years. As long as someone will continue renewing their contract, they will not leave ever, because that's the way their brain works. They're incredibly talented, but they are not really willing to or comfortable at all jumping off the deep end and putting themselves out there too much, right? Other people absolutely despise being in contracts for too long. It's good to have something for maybe a year and a half, and now, okay, let's go to the next project. I need to do the next thing. And if you know these kinds of things about yourself, and you can find clarity on those kinds of questions, then it can help point you towards the different markets that might be good for you to explore or to work in. Because ultimately, if you can find parts of the industry that serve your talents, but also serve the way you think, the way you personally need to be fulfilled, or the way your brain works and everything syncs up, well, then that makes it so much easier for you to show up fully present and do your best work.
Okay. I want to hit on the idea of sacrifice, because you mentioned that word in the beginning of your statement. Is hard work in your craft or on your craft or with your craft, is that really sacrifice? Because I love what I do. I don't think of it as work. I enjoy getting to the studio and talking to people and doing my little video shows, and it doesn't seem like work at all.
Yeah.
So why would I call that a sacrifice? I mean, I get the idea of the starving artist.
Yeah.
Where you said the guy who will just stay in the show forever just because he needs the paycheck, or the ones that'll risk, going away from the show and maybe not having a paycheck coming in. That's been a question that's been asked for a long time. Is it really necessary to starve for the sake of your art?
No, and that's not what I imply is. It's not that, because I agree, like showing up and doing the thing, your creative thing, shouldn't seem like a sacrifice, but choosing to train or choosing to refine something versus going out and partying is a sacrifice. Or saving your money so you can go do a huge audition series for whatever season it might be versus going on a holiday somewhere is a sacrifice. Okay. So you have to choose what's important to you, and be all in on what it is that you want. And I think, and because of that, different things would be viewed as a sacrifice or a challenge, and leaving comforts, that of being, maybe near family or friends in a certain area, and saying, I'm going to New York City, I'm going to the big city, or whatever you're doing. It's, while that's exciting to you and you're willing to do that, it's a big move, and there's a lot of things that also come with that. So it's more of those kinds of things that I'm talking about in that sense.
Okay. It reminds me of a conversation I had with Sam Harris. Do you know who he is? He was the original Star Search winner when it was the very first show, and he went on to record multi-platinum albums, and he does a one-man show now of his life. Anyways, we were talking about that, and he just recently adopted a kid with his partner, and I said, oh, well, is he showing any interest in music or entertainment? And Sam kind of said, "No, I don't know. Maybe he's sort of funny. He does this sort of stand-up routine." And I think the kid's only about 10 or 11.
Yeah.
But I said, "Well, what would you tell him if he wanted to go into show business?" And the one word that Sam said that stuck with me through that was, he said, "I would want to make sure that he was ready to make the personal investment that is required for this business. Otherwise, I would discourage him." And I think that maybe is what you're talking about, the sacrifice.
Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the personal investment and that means with a lot of people, it's the rejection that kills you. At least for me, it did. And that's the sacrifice. You got to get up there basically naked on stage and have people judge you and ridicule or say, "Nope, sorry, next, don't call us." And
then show up for the next one and do it all over again.
And do it all over again and be just as good, if not better, than the first day. That you cannot take that stuff to heart and you cannot let that stuff bring you down. And I think that's very difficult. That is a huge sacrifice to work yourself through that psychologically,
100%. And as far as I love the investment in are you willing to make the investment in yourself? That also ties it back to the entrepreneurialism side and the connections between the two, because when you to be a professional entertainer, there are expenses, right? There's training that costs. There's all of your marketing material, your headshots, your reels, all of these things cost money, right? And just like a business, you have to be willing to and believe that this investment now and these expenses now and this time invested now as well is going to pay dividends in the end, right? You're going to get some kind of return on all of that, right? And I think a lot of people they don't frame it in the sense that they are a business, that's exactly what they're doing. They just go, "Oh, that's what you need. Oh, I gotta take some acting classes. I gotta take some singing classes. I gotta get a headshot." And they just think of these things that they gotta do because that's just part of it. But I think it is helpful to frame it in, "Hey, I am the business. I am it. And what does my business need? What resources, what assets does it need to position itself to succeed in whatever market that I'm going to be succeeding in?"
Goes right back to what I was saying about in the old days when people had managers to take care of all of this, because it just isn't easy for a lot of creatives to view their commodity as nothing more than a can of soup, because that's really how you have to look at it when you get out there and people's music. And then people start looking at your music going, "Oh, no, we're not looking for something like that. We're looking for something. Oh, but I'm fabulous. Oh, yeah, okay."
Yeah, and maybe you are, but maybe but that's not.
That's not what they're looking for, and you can't take it.
You are going to be dealing with, and even if you've got a huge creative team, and ultimately there is there's a decision that's going to have to be made that it comes down to, is this person going to be good for this job, and is it going to help this show generate revenue so it can stay open, so everyone can continue, so we can continue doing this project, right?
Right.
So
we do have to wind this down. Unfortunately, we just blew through that last 10 minutes there. I'm going to invite you formally to come back and do part 2. Would you be interested in that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Well, please give out your website so that people can check out, what you're doing.
Yeah, I think the most direct way to get in touch with everything that I do would go to my personal website. It's danereis.com. You can go there, and from there you can find everything about what it is that I do, and also You Booked It and the podcast and everything. Everything links out from there. And if you would prefer to hit me up on social media, the best place would be on Instagram. It's at the Dane Reis.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Dane. I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface of this. This is
a good conversation.
This is a big topic, and I think it's a topic that's important for a lot of my listeners, because I do have a lot of entertainment people. I really want to get into this a little deeper. So we will have you back just as soon as we can schedule. And this was Dane Reis Part 1, and look forward to Dane Reis Part 2 coming soon. Thanks, Dane.